Well, hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Feeling Smarter. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Tim Miller, who is in the studio with me. G'day, how are you?
Aaron, I'm going well. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Well, this week we ran our State of SMSF's webinar, which pretty much launches our CPD for the year and also our upcoming SMSF Day events between the 20th of March through to the 2nd of April 2025.
Yep.
And it's fair to say, Tim, that there was a lot of discussion around some key areas, but before we get into those, I guess some interesting observations from you on some of the topics that we covered in the session.
Yeah, so I think what we try to do with that State of SMSF is really sort of talk about the SMSF industry as a whole, and what we've got to look forward to moving ahead, and what sort of technical challenges or compliance challenges have we've got from recent ATO and other updates that we see coming through the industry. So one of the things that we noticed or took note of was the growth of self-managed superannuation funds, and we paid particular attention to the numbers which highlight that really we're seeing a growth in this industry that we haven't seen for over a decade. And this is coming on the back of super reform in 2017, which saw the SMSF industry sort of dip to its lowest ebb from an establishment point of view, to now sort of 7 years later, seeing the strongest growth we've seen in a long time, and not necessarily having the answers to why, but saying that it's a real positive for this industry that despite what the government have done, it's going strong.
Yeah, and we kind of started in that vein, didn't we? We said when you look back in 2024, we had a whole heap of things that occurred that didn't necessarily reflect positively on the SMSF industry in terms of where Div 296 was heading, where the gnarly measures were heading after the years of consultation. And then we saw a whole number of updated views on items, which we'll talk about more shortly. But against the backdrop of all that, we've seen this, as we said, resurgence of SMSF growth. That you refer to that super reforms year, and the net establishments were 44. Yet here we are in September of 2024 with net establishments going past 10,000. So I think it was 10,700 odd in that September quarter, and I suspect we'll continue to see a fairly not aggressive, but a fairly assertive run rate in respect to SMSF establishments and those younger cohort of entrants coming in to the sector as well, which is another area that we did really highlight, that age profile of individuals coming in has really shifted from that 45 to 54 bracket down to the 35 to 44 bracket as that entry point. And the reasons why, again, coming back to the fact that those individuals have had compulsory super for a much longer period of time and at a much higher rate than you and I may have had through our working life.
Yeah, correct. And so they were the positive elements that we took out of that. And of course, the other thing which we were pretty pleased with was the CPI indexation numbers came out literally 15 minutes before we started, which is always requires
nothing like updating slides at the very last moment.
Indeed, and it confirmed for us that we had the appropriate number, which we ultimately knew anyhow. But you always want that confirmation that the general transfer balance cap will be indexed to $2 million from the 1st of July, which of course that has ramifications from an income stream point of view, and we'll touch on income stream shortly, but also from a contribution point of view with changes ultimately to total super balance with regards to anything that reflects on or references the general transfer balance cap. And so we see that as a good opportunity, and we're going to talk about it next week, how the general transfer balance cap impacts things like the bring forward provisions.
Yeah, and it's quite often that we see people, because of the fact that we've got different methodologies of WOTI, wages, CPI, inflation, impacting different things around caps, transfer balance caps, contribution caps, that you can get quite confused as you work through those things. And therefore, taking a step back and working through some of those things in light of that adjustment to the transfer balance cap, we see as an important video that we can put together as part of our Feeling Smarter events. The other thing then from our events was to highlight I guess, the areas of greatest interest with people that attended. So we had 700 plus registrations. A significant number of those were online and have requested the videos, the webinar recording, and the like as well. But there are a couple of real things that were drawn out very quickly, and the chat and questions blew up.
Yeah.
When it comes to these things.
Yeah, and look, the first one, of course, because we spoke about regulatory update, and the main one that got the greatest amount of interest was the re-release or the update, the refresh of TR 2013-5, which is when a pension commences and ceases, and of course the particular interest around the concept of a pension ceasing when a fund fails to meet the pension standards. Nothing new in the sense of that's always been a pension cessation event, but the ramifications of that event, we know, and we've spoken about previously in a Feeling Smarter video, that the ramifications of that cessation and what it means from an ECPI point of view, from a reporting point of view, but also more importantly from when a new pension commences. And it was that failure to pay the minimum and the ramifications from a reporting point of view that certainly had the most significance from a question point of view. So we'll touch on that in a moment. And of course, then the second one was the recent release of these legacy pension regulations and the associated reserve allocations, and so a fair bit of interest on that as well.
And we're not going to go into that today. We do have a webinar coming up in respect to the impact of those legacy pension regulations and reserve allocation rules. So, and we have spoken about that, and no doubt in the not too distant future we'll be covering that again, because the more that we unpack that, the more that we're finding things that we need to obviously address. But yeah, that pension area is certainly an area that people are really got to get their head around again from the ATO's revised view. I mean, there was even a question yesterday where we referenced the case law, the Douglas case, and they look it up, and the comment was, well, what's a military super fund got to do with an SMSF? And once you kind of work through those issues and understand, it came down to literally one word in essence that really changed the landscape around the ATO's views on within that tax ruling, and in particular the ability to claim ECPI and that conscious decision to require commutation. It's going to play a really significant role in 2025 as people are working through the accounting and administration of these funds and events ultimately where a pension is failed. And that's why at our SMSF days, we are going to be spending at least one of our sessions as part of our broader case study for the day. We're going to be drilling down on many of those issues to make sure people are absolutely across what needs to occur, and also then how you effectively implement and report all that information as well.
Yeah, and I think it's what really that ruling showed to me was, and I'm not suggesting that we're going to see this from a permanent point of view. It would be nice, but it was really that recognition by the regulator that tax and SIS aren't two separate items. They absolutely are two separate items, but from a compliance point of view, from a fund compliance point of view, we can't look at tax and SIS in isolation. We have to look at them collectively and what it means, because the ruling was really saying this is where you lose your ECPI. Right? But what it's now saying is this is when you lose your ECPI, and you cannot have a pension in accordance with the SIS regulations if you lose that ECPI for an account-based pension because you failed these particular standards. And so it's of interesting note, given that these regulations around, say, commuting market-linked pensions and that will certainly bring that into the spotlight over the next 5 years. And so what it really showed was there's still a lot of work within the industry from a knowledge-based point of view to make sure that we have the information available to us to be able to make the right decisions, and appreciate that with quarterly reporting, pretty much any fund that has failed to pay the minimum in the 2024 financial year, if they haven't reported that failure yet, the due date for that is effectively the 28th of July. And so there's got to be consideration given by the regulator to the misunderstanding or the lack of understanding around some of the elements of that ruling, and the ongoing or the flow-on effect it has to reporting obligations and other things.
Yeah, and this isn't a new area
No.
where the integration of the income tax assists. I mean, this is exactly what happened in the area of NALI and the arm's length requirements, insofar that where there was a singular view taken, ultimately the ATO looked at and explored and found and connected the income tax issues to the SIS-related issues. So it is just a good reminder again that in the formulation of literature from the regulator, they are going to be not taking a singular lens to things, and therefore understanding the impact of something like that failed pension standards thing is of utmost importance, because it's not just the loss of ECPI there, it's then looking at the entire construct of that income stream and the fact that that pension is going to need to consciously commute, and then it impacts obviously binding death benefit nominations and reversionary pensions and all those things. And that's really what we're going to be unpacking as part of our SMSF Day event. So, Tim, we have our SMSF Days coming up. Our early bird is available still through until around the 14th of February. We are going around Australia. We are all booked too, we should say. So kicking off in Perth on the 20th, in Adelaide on the 25th of March, in Melbourne on the 27th of March, in Brisbane, April Fool's Day, 1st of April, and then we wrap up in Sydney on the 2nd of April. So we have a very busy schedule, but very much look forward to these days. It's great interaction. So if you want to find out more, visit our website, smartersmsf.com/SMSF Day. Thanks, Tim.
Always a pleasure.
Have a great rest of the week. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.